My parents called me a freeloader raising bastards on our dime, while I was literally paying both their mortgages without them knowing. Please take a second to support our channel, hit subscribe and drop a comment saying where you're watching from. You're part of this story too. The words hit me like ice water. You're nothing but a freeloader raising bastards on our dime, Keisha. My mother's voice dripped with venom across the Thanksgiving table, her perfectly manicured finger pointing at my two daughters like they were vermin. My father nodded, cutting his turkey with deliberate precision, not even looking up. Always knew you'd amount to nothing. Taking advantage of family hospitality. I felt my 7-year-old Amara grip my hand under the table. Beside her 10-year-old Zoe's eyes filled with tears. The entire family, my brother Marcus, his wife Jennifer, my Aunt Ruth, sat frozen, forks suspended in midair. The chandelier above cast harsh shadows across my parents' faces, making them look like strangers. Like monsters. "Excuse me." My voice came out steady, though my heart hammered against my ribs. The smell of sage and roasted vegetables suddenly made me nauseous. "You heard your mother," Dad said, finally meeting my eyes. His expression held nothing but contempt. "You moved back into our rental property paying what? $800 a month for a 3-bedroom? That's charity, Keisha. Pure charity. And you have the nerve to show up here expecting us to feed you and those girls." The rental property. The one I'd been living in for 3 years since my divorce from Andre. The modest house on Maple Street with the blue shutters and the squeaky porch swing. $800 felt like scraping by, but I'd managed. I'd always managed. What they didn't know, what nobody knew, could have stopped my heart right there if I'd let the irony fully sink in. 3 years ago, when everything fell apart with Andre, I'd discovered something that changed everything. My parents were drowning. Not in the obvious ways. They still drove their Mercedes, still hosted elaborate dinners, still wore designer clothes to church every Sunday. But I'd seen the foreclosure notice that day I'd stopped by unannounced. It was sitting on Dad's desk, bold red letters screaming final notice. I'd stood in his study, my hands trembling as I read about the balloon payment they couldn't make. Not just on their house, the sprawling 4-bedroom colonial in Riverside Estates, but also on a second property they'd bought as an investment. Some condo in Florida they'd planned to retire to. The numbers swam before my eyes. They were 60 days from losing everything. My mind had raced that day. I'd just gotten my promotion at Morrison Tech, jumping from senior developer to team lead. The salary increase was substantial. Enough to finally breathe. Enough to help. And despite everything, despite the way Mom always compared me to my brother's perfect wife, despite Dad's constant disappointment that I'd chosen computers over the medical career he'd planned, they were my parents. I'd made an anonymous payment that week. Then another. Then I'd set up automatic transfers through a complicated web of LLCs and shell accounts. Nobody could trace it back to me. Every month for 3 years I'd paid both mortgages. My parents thought some investment had finally paid off. They never questioned their sudden fortune. "Mom, that's not fair," Marcus finally spoke up, but his voice lacked conviction. Jennifer put her hand on his arm, silencing him with a look. My brother had always been the golden child. Harvard graduate, corporate lawyer, 2 perfect sons. He'd never had to struggle. "Fair." Mom's laugh was brittle, sharp enough to cut. "What's not fair is watching your father and I work ourselves to the bone our entire lives, giving you children everything, and this is how you repay us. Living off our generosity while raising kids without a father." The flashback hit me unbidden. Andre's face the day I'd caught him with his assistant. The smell of her perfume in our bedroom. The way he'd looked at me with such casual cruelty and said, "Can you blame me? You're always working, always tired. She makes me feel alive." The divorce papers. The custody agreement. The way I'd rebuilt everything from scratch. Those kids have a father, I said quietly, my fingernails digging into my palms. He just chooses not to be involved. Exactly, Dad interjected, his voice rising. Poor choices, Keisha. Always making poor choices. We raised you better than this. And now you expect us to subsidize your failures. Something inside me began to crack. Not break, not yet. To crack. Like ice over a frozen lake, spider webbing in every direction. I thought about my bank statements. The transfers marked property management, Riverside, and property management, Sunrise. Aunt Ruth cleared her throat. Now maybe we should all just calm down and stay out of this, Ruth, Mom snapped. You've always been too soft on her. That's part of the problem. Nobody holds Keisha accountable. I watched my aunt's face flush, watched her sink back into her chair. Ruth had helped me after the divorce, watching the girls when I worked late, bringing groceries when money was tight those first few months. She knew how hard I'd fought to stand on my own feet. Amara's small voice broke through the tension. Mommy works really hard. She looked at her grandmother with confusion that would haunt me later. She's on her computer until late. She makes us breakfast every morning and helps with homework and… Hush, child, my mother said dismissively. Adults are talking. That's when something shifted in me. The way she dismissed my daughter, my brilliant, kind, sensitive Amara, with such casual cruelty. The way my father nodded in agreement, like my children were merely props in the story of my failure. The way Marcus looked away, unwilling to stand up for his own nieces. Let's go, girls. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The sound was obscenely loud in the suddenly silent room. Oh, running away, Dad scoffed. Classic Keisha. Can't face the truth about yourself. I paused, my hands on my daughter's shoulders. Every fiber of my being wanted to explode, to tell them everything, to watch their smug faces crumble. But not yet. Not here. The drive home was silent except for Zoe's quiet sniffles. I watched her in the rearview mirror, her face pressed against the window, and felt rage boiling in my chest. Rage at Andre for abandoning us. Rage at my parents for their cruelty. Rage at myself for caring what they thought. When we got home, I tucked both girls into bed, reading extra chapters from their current favorite book. After they finally fell asleep, I sat in my home office, staring at my computer screen. The folders were all there. 3 years of mortgage payments, meticulously documented. Spreadsheets tracking every penny I'd sent to save their houses while living on ramen noodles and scrambled eggs some weeks. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Look, you know how they are. Just apologize and it'll blow over. Just apologize. For what? For existing? For surviving my divorce? For raising my children alone while their father built a new life with his mistress-turned-wife? For secretly saving our parents' entire financial legacy while they called me a freeloader? I opened my banking app. The next automatic payment was scheduled for 3 days from now, December 1st. Combined mortgages, $4,800. Money I could have spent on better clothes for the girls, on fixing my car's transmission that had been grinding for months, on the dental work I'd been postponing. My cursor hovered over the cancel payment button. My hand trembled. I didn't cancel it. Not that night. Instead, I lay awake until 3 in the morning, memories assaulting me in waves. I remembered being 8 years old, watching Mom brush off my science fair trophy because I'd only gotten second place. Marcus had won first the year before. I remembered Dad's disappointment when I'd chosen computer science over medical school. Such a waste of intelligence, he'd said. Anyone can code. Doctors save lives. I remembered my wedding day. Mom's tight smile because the venue wasn't fancy enough. Dad's speech that was more about his own accomplishments than blessing our marriage. And I remembered the divorce. Dad's words. I told you that boy was beneath you, but did you listen? Now look at you. Damaged goods with 2 kids. Who's going to want you now? The next morning I called my financial advisor, Jackson Porter. We'd been working together since my promotion, and he'd helped me structure the anonymous payments to my parents. Jackson, I need to know something. If I stop the payments, how long before they face consequences? His pause told me everything. Keisha, they'd miss the December payment. By January they'd get a notice. By February they'd be in serious trouble. The Florida condo, that's the bigger issue. The interest rate on that loan is astronomical. They're barely staying afloat with your help. And without it? 6 months, maybe less. They'd lose both properties. I thanked him and hung up. Then I called my lawyer, Diana Chin, who'd handled my divorce. Diana, hypothetically, if someone had been secretly paying another person's mortgages, and that person had been verbally abusive. Diana's voice was sharp with understanding. You're talking about your parents. It wasn't a question. She'd heard enough stories during my divorce proceedings. Keisha, listen to me carefully. If you've been making those payments anonymously, they have no legal claim to continued support. But if you stop, they'll lose everything. Yes. And they'll never know it was you keeping them afloat. She paused. Unless you tell them. That's when the idea took root. Not revenge, not exactly. More like justice, truth. The kind that burns away all the pretense and leaves only ashes. I spent the weekend with my daughters, taking them to the park, baking cookies, watching their favorite movies. Sunday night, after they were asleep, I drafted an email. Then deleted it. Then drafted it again. The words had to be perfect, not cruel but clear. Not vindictive but honest. Monday morning my phone rang. Dad's number. I almost didn't answer. Your mother's upset, he said without preamble. No greeting, no apology for Thanksgiving. You embarrassed her in front of the family, walking out like that. The audacity nearly took my breath away. I embarrassed her? Don't start with me, Keisha. We've given you every advantage in life, and this is how you show gratitude? Your mother thinks we should raise the rent on that house. Maybe if you had to pay market rate, you'd appreciate what we do for you. The ice cracked a little more. Market rate in that neighborhood was $2,200. With my current expenses, including what I'd been paying for their mortgages, that would financially devastate me. How much were you thinking? I asked, my voice eerily calm. 2,000 seems fair. That's still below market value. We'll implement it January 1st. His tone was final, authoritative. The same tone he'd used my entire childhood when making unilateral decisions about my life. I thought about Zoe's upcoming birthday. The school trip Amara had been begging to go on. The emergency fund I'd been trying to rebuild after paying for car repairs last month. And I thought about the $4,800 leaving my account in 2 days to save houses my father would use to punish me. Okay, I said simply. His pause suggested he'd expected a fight. Okay? That's it. That's it. Have a good day, Dad. I hung up before he could respond. Then I did what I should have done years ago. I called Jackson back. Cancel all automatic payments. Every single one. My hands shook as I said it, but my voice didn't. Keisha, are you sure? This isn't something you can easily undo. I'm sure. And Jackson? I need you to prepare a document. A complete record of every payment I've made with dates, amounts, and proof of origin. Can you do that? Absolutely. May I ask why? Because I'm done being invisible. I hung up and immediately called Diana. I need you to draft a letter for me. Something official from an attorney. I'm going to tell them everything. Diana was quiet for a moment. This is going to detonate your family. My family detonated me on Thanksgiving, I replied. I'm just returning the favor with the truth. The letter arrived at my parents' house on December 15th. By then they'd already received the notice about their missed December payment. I knew because Marcus called me panicked. Keisha, something's wrong with Mom and Dad's mortgage. Some payment didn't go through. They're freaking out. Dad's trying to figure out what investment account was funding it, but he can't find any record. It's like the money just stopped. I let the silence stretch between us. In the background I could hear Jennifer asking what was wrong. Maybe you should ask them about that, I said carefully. What? Why would you? He stopped. I could almost hear the gears turning. Keisha, what did you do? Nothing, Marcus. I did absolutely nothing. And that's the problem, isn't it? When I do nothing, everything falls apart for them. I hung up. The letter Diana drafted was a masterpiece of legal clarity and emotional devastation. It detailed every payment, every sacrifice, every month that I'd chosen their financial stability over my own comfort. It included bank records, transaction histories, and a final paragraph that still made my chest tight when I read it. For 3 years, while you called me a failure, I held your legacy together. While you called my children bastards, I ensured they'd have grandparents with a roof over their heads. I asked for nothing but basic human decency. You couldn't even give me that. Effective immediately, I am exercising my right to discontinue voluntary financial support. You have 6 months to make alternative arrangements. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. My mother showed up at my door 3 days later. I watched through the peephole as she rang the bell repeatedly, her face contorted with an emotion I couldn't quite read. Rage? Fear? I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Mom. You spiteful, vindictive little. She caught herself, glancing behind me where the girls were watching TV. Her voice dropped to a harsh whisper. How could you? How could you do this to your own parents? Do what exactly? Stop paying your bills? The bills you didn't even know I was paying? Her face flushed. That's not. You can't just. We thought that was from your father's investment portfolio. You let us believe. I let you believe whatever you wanted to believe, I interrupted. I never lied. I just didn't advertise that your freeloader daughter was keeping you from homelessness. Don't be dramatic. We weren't going to be homeless. I pulled out my phone, opened the Photos app, and showed her the picture I'd taken of that original foreclosure notice 3 years ago. You had 60 days. I saw this notice. I saved you. And at Thanksgiving you called my children bastards. Her hand went to her mouth. For the first time in my life I saw my mother at a loss for words. You have 6 months, I continued. Diana Chin, my attorney, included resources for financial counseling in the letter. I suggest you use them. Keisha, please. We're your parents. You can't just abandon us. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. I'm not abandoning you. I'm just stopping the anonymous financial support you didn't appreciate, respect, or acknowledge. You'll figure it out. You're resourceful people. You raised me after all. Aunt Ruth called that evening. Baby girl, is it true? What your mama's saying about you paying their mortgages? I confirmed it, too tired to pretend anymore. Ruth was silent for a long moment, then, sweet Jesus. All this time? And they treated you like that? Yeah. I'm so sorry, Keisha. I should have said more at Thanksgiving. I should have stood up for you and those babies. It's okay, Aunt Ruth. It's not okay. None of this is okay. She paused. Your mama's telling everyone you're trying to destroy them. But I know better. I've watched you these past 3 years. I've seen you stretch yourself thin, working yourself half to death. I just didn't know how thin. The family grapevine lit up like wildfire. Suddenly everyone had an opinion. Dad's brother, Uncle Jerome, called to tell me I was being unreasonable. Family takes care of family, he said. You can't just pull support like that. Like they pulled their support when Andre left me? I countered. When Dad told me I was damaged goods. When Mom said my children were bastards. That kind of family support. Marcus came over a week later looking haggard. They're talking about selling the Florida condo. Dad's looking for a second mortgage on the house. This is serious, Keisha. I know it's serious, Marcus. It was serious 3 years ago when I found that foreclosure notice. It's been serious every single month when I chose to pay their bills instead of saving for my daughter's college funds. He sat down heavily on my couch. Why didn't you tell us? Tell you what? That I was secretly keeping our parents afloat? What would that have accomplished? Christmas came and went. I didn't attend family gatherings. Instead, I took the girls to Aunt Ruth's house, where we had a quiet, peaceful celebration. No criticisms, no comparisons, no cruelty. Just love and laughter and the smell of Ruth's famous sweet potato pie. January brought a shift. My father finally called and his voice was different. Smaller. Keisha, we need to talk. In person. They came to my house this time, both of them. Dad's Mercedes looked older somehow, less impressive. They sat stiffly on my couch while the girls played in their room, the door firmly closed. We didn't know, Mom started. About the mortgages. About what you were doing. I know. That was the point. Dad cleared his throat. We've secured a loan. Took out a second mortgage on the house. We'll manage. But Keisha. He paused, seeming to struggle with words. Why did you do it in the first place if you were just going to stop? This was the moment I'd been simultaneously dreading and craving. I did it because you're my parents. Because despite everything I loved you. I stopped because you showed me that love was one-directional. That I could sacrifice everything and it still wouldn't be enough to earn basic respect. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We didn't mean. You called my children bastards, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion choking me. On Thanksgiving. In front of everyone. Those girls are innocent and you treated them like they were shameful. That was my breaking point, Mom. Not the years of criticism, not the constant comparisons to Marcus, not the disappointment. It was you hurting my babies. The silence was suffocating. 3 months later, things had settled into a new normal. My parents paid their own mortgages. Barely, but they managed. They'd sold the Florida condo at a loss and downsized their lifestyle significantly. The Mercedes was gone, replaced by a practical Honda. They'd stopped hosting elaborate dinners and church clothes came from Macy's instead of boutiques. Marcus reported that they'd started attending financial counseling. Dad had even picked up some consulting work to supplement his retirement income. They were surviving, not thriving but surviving. On their own merit. I'd taken the money I'd been sending them and opened college funds for both girls. Amara's first deposit made me cry with relief. Zoe's made me smile. The emergency fund I'd been trying to build finally had a real cushion. I'd even started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but the possibility felt like freedom. My parents and I spoke occasionally, brief and surface-level conversations. They'd sent birthday cards to the girls with modest checks inside. No more demands, no more criticisms. Just distance. Respectful distance. Aunt Ruth told me Mom had said something to her. Something that felt like the closest thing to an apology I'd probably ever get. I didn't know Keisha was that strong. I thought we'd raised her to need us. You did, Ruth had replied. You just never realized she needed you to be better, not wealthier. Standing in my kitchen one Sunday morning, watching my daughters make pancakes with flour everywhere and laughter filling the spaces where criticism used to live, I realized something profound. I'd spent 3 years trying to save my parents' houses. But in finally walking away, I'd saved something more important. My daughter's understanding of their own worth and my own soul. The mortgage payments were someone else's burden now. Mine was lighter, fuller, and finally free.